The Denver International Airport erupted into chaos when a middle-aged security officer suddenly lunged forward and wrapped his hand around the throat of a young woman in the middle of the crowded checkpoint. The attack happened so fast that most passengers only caught a glimpse of his rough grip, forcing her back toward the screening machines. But within seconds, everyone sensed something was wrong. The fear that should have appeared in the victim's eyes simply was not there. Erin Carter had walked into the airport that morning like any other traveler. Gray jacket, dark jeans, a compact crossbody bag. She blended into the crowd with her head lowered, like someone rushing to make a flight. No one noticed her sharp eyes quietly sweeping the area, registering faces, blind spots, and every subtle movement. In her mind, the covert mission she had spent months pursuing was entering its most dangerous stage, and just one mistake would bring everything crashing down. When Erin placed her belongings on the conveyor belt and scanned her boarding pass, she already knew what was coming. Ray Mulligan, the security officer assigned to that morning's checkpoint, gave her a look filled with scrutiny. He was in his early 40s, large-framed, and carried a constant simmering resentment in his eyes, as if the world owed him something. Erin instantly recognized the type of man who should never hold authority, yet here he had far too much. She had not even stepped through the metal detector when Mulligan barked at her to move aside for additional screening. Passengers glanced over, then dismissed it as routine. Erin merely shrugged and kept her tone calm. That indifference irritated Mulligan. He stepped closer than necessary, his black boots stopping just inches from her toes. Erin felt his breath on her cheek, thick with hostility and bitterness. He began making vague accusations, suggesting she looked suspicious or might be hiding something. The line behind them slowed, and curious glances began to form. Erin kept her expression steady, but deep inside a ripple of unease surfaced. Not fear, but recognition that Mulligan seemed to know something he should not know. Then everything happened in a single breath. Mulligan lunged his hand, clamping violently around her throat. Passengers screamed. A mother pulled her child away. A young man lifted his phone to record. Mulligan did not care. His face flushed, red jaw, locked eyes, burning with a chaotic, malicious intent. Erin understood in that instant that this was no loss of temper. This was deliberate. He wanted to force her to react. He wanted to expose who she really was. But Mulligan never expected that his own attack would destroy his plan entirely. Erin did not gasp for air or panic. In the brief moment when their eyes met, Mulligan sensed something he could not explain. This young woman was not a victim. She was assessing him, measuring distance, calculating her counterstrike. It took only one movement. Erin's left wrist snapped upward, locking his wrist in place. Her right arm swept sideways, driving into his elbow. A sharp crack sounded. Mulligan released her in pain, but she had already pivoted, using her full momentum to throw him onto the cold tile floor. The impact echoed across the checkpoint. Silence followed. Passengers froze. Erin rose, smoothly adjusted her jacket, her breathing steady, as if she had never been attacked. Mulligan lay groaning on the ground, his trembling hand reaching for the radio that had slid from his belt. Erin moved first. She knelt, pulled a black leather wallet from her pocket, and flipped it open in front of him. The overhead lights reflected off the polished badge. Her voice was low, firm, and unmistakably authoritative. "Federal agent, you just assaulted the wrong person." People held their breath. A child whispered to his mother. Mulligan's eyes widened in terror. But for Erin, that moment confirmed what she already knew. He knew she was not an ordinary passenger. He had wanted to expose her mission, which meant the people behind him knew as well, and now her mission was more dangerous than ever. The interrogation room inside Denver Airport's security division was washed in a cold white light that made everyone look more exhausted than they actually were. Erin Carter sat upright on the metal chair, her hands resting lightly on the table. Calm, to a degree that felt unnatural. Beside her federal credentials, the wall-mounted camera blinked a steady red recording her every breath. But inside Erin's mind, nothing was still. Her eyes remained composed, yet her thoughts moved like a precision-built tactical machine. Mulligan had not acted on impulse. He knew who she was, and someone had told him. The door swung open. Linda Pierce, a security supervisor with more than 30 years on the job, entered first. Behind her was Jacob Turner, shoulders tense, eyes flicking toward Erin as if she were an explosive device waiting to detonate. Linda dropped a stack of files onto the table, the slap of paper making Jacob flinch. Erin did not move, simply lifted her gaze, studying both of them as if reading a thermal map of their emotions. Linda spoke first, her voice low and weary. "Agent Carter, you caused quite a scene at the checkpoint." Erin answered immediately, short and sharp, leaving no room for interpretation. "It was not me. Mulligan created that scene. I ended it." Linda did not argue. The footage had already proven everything. The real question was why he would attack a small woman in front of dozens of witnesses and under 3 security cameras. Any seasoned officer knew that was not a momentary loss of control. Jacob opened the file, trying to look composed, but his voice trembled slightly. We reviewed the footage. He was completely in the wrong. "But Mulligan has worked here for 15 years. He has never done anything like that." Erin tilted her head. The subtle shift made both Jacob and Linda stiffen, as if they had just revealed something important without realizing it. Erin spoke slowly, each word measured and cold. A longtime officer who knows every camera, every rule, every risk, yet he dares to choke a passenger in front of a crowd. "Do you really think that was spontaneous?" Linda did not answer. A flicker of worry crossed her eyes, the kind she had been trying to hide since she walked in. Erin leaned forward slightly, her voice low, but cutting straight through their thoughts. "He believed I was not a passenger. He wanted me to react. He wanted me exposed. Which means the information has leaked." Jacob swallowed hard. "Who knows about your identity?" The question was so naive that Erin only looked at him for a single second. She did not speak, but her eyes said everything. Too many people who should not know. Linda exhaled and stood bracing her hands on the table, her voice softer yet burdened with responsibility. "We have no authority to interfere with your mission. But if your information was compromised inside our own security zone, then this is much bigger than Mulligan." Erin had known that long before they said it. She had known from the moment his hand closed around her throat, from the moment she saw the flash in his eyes, as if he had finally seen what he was looking for. Erin gathered the documents and picked up her badge. "You have only one job," she said, her tone steady but cold. "Keep everything exactly as it is. No warnings, no internal alerts. Let me handle it myself," Jacob blurted out. "But you will be alone." Erin rose from her chair. "I have been alone since the mission began." When she walked into the hallway and the door closed behind her, Linda looked at Jacob with heavy eyes. "Do you feel it?" Jacob nodded faintly. "Yes. She is afraid of something, but not for herself." Linda tightened her grip on her pen. "Exactly. And if a federal agent who has survived dozens of dangerous missions is still afraid, then we are about to witness something far worse." Erin walked down the long corridor, the white lights stretching into a cold ribbon across her neatly tied hair. In her chest, a dark premonition began to spread. Mulligan was not the enemy. He was only a warning. The real threat she faced was still hiding somewhere among the nameless crowd outside. Something was watching her, waiting for her next move. And now, the real game had finally begun. The late afternoon cast long shadows across the main concourse of the Denver airport. Sunlight broke into golden streaks on the polished floor. But to Erin Carter, this place was no longer an airport. It felt like a silent battlefield where every movement could be a signal and every face could be a disguise. After the confrontation with Mulligan and the tense interrogation that followed, Erin understood something. No one in the security division dared to say out loud. The enemy was here hidden behind familiar uniforms and posing as the very people passengers trusted every day. She blended into the flow of travelers heading toward the gates, walking as if she were simply searching for the nearest coffee counter. But every step was calculated. Every glance was deliberate. Erin shifted her breathing, her pace, her posture, all to make herself invisible, to make sure whoever was watching could not tell whether she knew she had been compromised. In the shoving crowd, Erin quickly noticed details ordinary people would overlook. A baggage handler pushing a cart glanced sideways at a guard standing near a restricted access door. That look was not a greeting. It was a confirmation signal. A janitor with an indifferent expression lingered near the storage room door as if keeping watch. A man in a Transportation Security Administration uniform stood too long at each checkpoint, his eyes constantly sweeping left and right. Each detail seemed like its own fragment, but in Erin's mind they began locking into place with cold precision. A network, a hidden chain, and Mulligan had only been the gatekeeper. She paused in front of a large window overlooking the lower level, pretending to check emails on her phone. In the reflection, she saw two men break away from a group of passengers quietly, angling behind her. They did not look directly at her, but their change of course was unmistakable. Erin lowered her phone and drifted to the left like someone trying to find the nearest exit. The two men adjusted their route as well. They kept a reasonable distance, but never lost sight of her. She was clearly a target. Erin tilted her head slightly, listening to the announcements above. A boarding change passengers called to scanners a crying child in the distance, all of it blending into the familiar chaos she had heard on countless missions. But beneath that noise, she picked out another sound: footsteps, urgent and purposeful, out of sync with the scattered rhythm of the crowd. The sound of someone tracking her. She changed tactics instantly. No running, no panic. She started observing in a way only trained operatives could, steady breath, lowered head to hide her eyes, but with her field of vision widened to capture every blind spot and exit. She entered the brightly lit duty-free store. The smell of perfume, the sound of tourist laughter, and the clinking of glass bottles masked the tension rising beneath her calm exterior. Erin walked along the wine display, using the reflection as a concealed mirror. The two men were still behind her, one pretending to examine a gift box, the other acting as if he were on a call, though his gaze kept flicking toward her. Something was wrong. These two were not just monitoring her. They were waiting for a command. Erin narrowed her eyes slightly. If Mulligan had learned her identity, it meant this network had access deep enough to recognize a federal agent. And if they had sent people to tail her, it meant they were ready to eliminate her. Just as her heartbeat picked up slightly, Erin sensed a shift in the air. A young woman rushed past, dropping her suitcase and blocking the walkway. People stopped offering help, voices apologizing, a store employee running over to pick up the scattered items. A small moment to most people, but to Erin, it was a perfect curtain. She slipped through the narrow gap that opened, moving faster, but never visibly rushing. As she crossed into the rear section of the shopping area, Erin paused for a second, looking at a full-length mirror placed against the wall. In the reflection, the two men who had been tailing her were caught amid the crowd, gathering around the fallen suitcase. One of them scowled, trying to push through. The other pulled out his phone and typed rapidly. Then he looked straight at Erin through the mirror. His eyes were cold, sharp. A mark left in plain sight. He knew she had seen him, and he no longer needed to hide. Erin tightened her grip on the strap of her bag, feeling the familiar weight of the gun concealed within the armored fabric. Her breathing slowed. Tonight, everything would shift into a new phase. They had picked up her trail. They wanted to threaten her, but they did not realize they had chosen the wrong target. And the hunt they believed they controlled was already starting to turn back on them. Night fell over Denver Airport like a heavy curtain swallowing the noise of the day. By the time the hour hand touched 3 a.m, the place that should have been filled only with the hum of ventilation systems and the occasional rattle of cargo carts had become the stage for a silent hunt. Erin Carter stood in the vast expanse of the cargo zone, dressed in a reflective vest like a ground crew worker, her hair tucked neatly under a cap. She looked no different from any other exhausted night shift employee, worn out by endless shipments. But that exhaustion was only a disguise, masking the cold focus sharpening in her eyes. Outside, the runway glowed under faint yellow lights reflecting off the fuselage of a transport aircraft already powered up and waiting to be loaded. Forklifts moved like mechanical beasts lifting crates onto conveyor belts. Erin walked slowly between the large pallets, blending into the movement of the loading crew. No one turned to look at her, but she looked at everyone, and she saw exactly what she needed to see. 3 men in airport security uniforms stood beside a silver container, but their eyes were not the eyes of men doing their jobs. They were the eyes of guards. They were not checking manifests, not writing anything down, not discussing procedures. They were focused entirely on the black steel crate resting on the ground. A crate larger than the others, heavier, marked with strange scratches along its sides. No shipping label, no warehouse code, no paperwork. In an international airport that was dangerously abnormal. Erin tapped her finger lightly to her ear, activating the hidden comms device woven into her hair. She whispered softly, yet her voice was steady. "This is Carter. The target is in sight. Black steel crate with 4 square sides. Armed guards present. Request confirmation of nearby support." A brief silence. Then Agent Cole Ramirez's deep voice came through. "2 teams are waiting along the outer perimeter, but Carter, slow it down. If they know you have identified the target, they will make the first move." Erin pressed her lips together. "It is not that they will. They already have." A subtle movement in the distance caught her eye. One of the guards stepped away from the group, walking with slow, deliberate steps, as if inspecting the area. Erin tilted her head ever so slightly, watching him through her peripheral vision. The tension in his posture did not belong to someone doing routine work. He looked like someone searching for someone. His eyes swept across every shadow, every worker, then abruptly stopped right where Erin stood near a forklift. He looked at her for far too long. Erin understood instantly. He recognized her gait, not her face. He had seen her the previous night in the airport, and now, despite her disguise, his instincts were on high alert. She crouched down, pretending to check a forklift wheel to hide her eyes, but her heartbeat quickened. In the silence of the night, every thump echoed inside her skull. Ramirez's voice returned in her ear. Carter report. Something is wrong with the movement patterns in the cargo area. I can feel it. Erin inhaled deeply. They know I am here. At that exact moment, footsteps emerged from her right. Not fast, not hurried. The steps of someone confident that no one could stop him. Erin rose to her feet, and when she turned, her eyes met the one face she least wanted to see at this hour. Ray Mulligan. No more uniform. No more frustrated, scowling checkpoint officer. His face was bruised where she had slammed him into the floor the morning before, but his eyes burned with the twisted satisfaction of a man who believed the tables had turned. He stood under the cold airport lights like someone who had just reclaimed his power. We meet again, Carter. His voice was rough, each word dragged out with venom. Two men in security jackets stepped out from the shadows behind him. Erin did not need to check for weapons. She had already heard the metallic click of suppressed firearms. 3 men, 1 steel crate, 1 plane ready for takeoff. This was no longer reconnaissance. This had become extermination. Erin said nothing. She did not need to. She stood up straight, one hand resting lightly near the pocket of her reflective vest, her body angled left as she calculated her counterstrike. Mulligan stepped closer, hatred twisting his mouth into a smile. He clenched his jaw like someone desperate to prove she should have feared him long ago. Tonight, he growled, filled with the stench of revenge. You crossed the line. This place belongs to us, and you are the outsider. Erin looked at him for a brief second. Her eyes were not cold, not angry. They held only one thing: calculation. She spoke slowly, her voice so low the wind sweeping across the runway barely carried it. Then you should run. Mulligan frowned. Erin tightened her grip on her bag strap. Her eyes flicked across the positions of the 3 men, the placement of the crate, the distance to the conveyor control panel. She saw everything in a single heartbeat, and as the wind swept across the runway, lifting a scrap of paper at their feet, the fight began. A sharp, compact crack rang out, not from a bullet but from the force of Erin Carter's movement as she pivoted hard to the right and kicked the pallet in front of her. The heavy wooden platform slid forward, becoming an unexpected shield just as the first suppressed round sliced through the air. Splinters burst everywhere. The first gunman cursed and adjusted his aim. But Erin was no longer there. She dropped flat against the cold concrete, her hand sweeping toward a technician's toolbox left beside a forklift wheel. A heavy wrench fell into her palm. That was all she needed, a crude weapon that became deadly in the hands of someone trained to turn anything into an advantage. Mulligan roared, "Shoot! Kill her!" The 2 men opened fire toward the stacks of cargo, the clatter of metal echoing against the low growl of the aircraft engines warming up outside. But Erin had already slipped out of sight, sprinting low along the crates like a moving shadow. Every breath she took was controlled to perfection, no wasted sound, no misstep. One of the gunmen stepped left, trying to find a better angle. A mistake. Erin whirled, launching the wrench like a steel arrow. It struck his wrist with a sharp, brutal crack. His gun dropped. He cried out. Erin closed the distance instantly, driving her elbow straight into his jaw. The man collapsed like a felled tree. The second man panicked and redirected his fire. Bullets ripped through the air, one grazing the edge of Erin's vest. She slid beneath a forklift inhaled once, then sprang up, yanking a metal bar from the machine's side and slamming it against his knee. He dropped with a strangled groan, completely unable to fight back. Only Mulligan remained. He stood a few meters away, gripping a folding knife that glinted under the yellow runway lights. His eyes were bloodshot, feral-cornered. Erin exhaled, once rolled her shoulders, adjusted her center of gravity. Mulligan stepped toward her, but the confidence was gone. His movements trembled, because now he finally understood. She was not a victim, not a target, not the small woman he thought he could choke in public and walk away from unscathed. She was the hunter, and he was just prey. Mulligan screamed and lunged, the blade slicing through the air. Erin leaned aside, her left hand snapping onto his wrist, twisting halfway around. His joint cracked with a clean, vicious sound. He nearly buckled from the pain, but Erin did not stop. She pulled, pivoted, and used his own momentum to slam him into the concrete. The impact drove the air from his chest. The knife clattered away, spinning before settling against the steel floor. But Mulligan refused to surrender. He forced himself upright, choking on his breath. Erin was already towering over him, her eyes hard, steady, untouched by anger or fear. Only cold, decisive clarity. She grabbed his collar and shoved him back down. His palms scraped against the floor as he tried to resist, but the strength in his limbs had faded into desperate, useless twitching. Erin leaned close, whispering into his ear, her voice lower than the engines outside. "You should not have touched me the first time. The second time was suicide." He tried to speak, but panic strangled his voice. Erin flipped him over, wrenching both arms behind his back and snapping a pair of handcuffs around his wrists, cuffs pulled from the gear she had hidden beneath her reflective vest. The metal bit into his skin, tight enough to deliver a message every plan he had. Every illusion of control he clung to had collapsed completely. Erin rose, drawing a single deep breath, her eyes fixed on the black steel crate sitting at the center of the conveyor. It had moved several meters before she stopped the belt with a precise shot to the control panel. A soft, clicking sound came from inside the crate. Erin felt her spine turn cold. Instinct told her exactly what she needed to know. Whatever was inside that container was not ordinary contraband. It was alive. It was moving. It was dangerous. Ramirez's voice burst through her earpiece, urgent. "Carter! My team is inside the zone! Status!" Erin looked at Mulligan, crumpled at her feet, at the two unconscious men, and at the steel crate standing frozen on the conveyor. She answered, her voice low and sharp enough to chill the air. "I am fine. But Ramirez, we just touched something someone has been trying to hide at any cost. And that cost may be measured in human lives." The warning lights on the ceiling of the cargo bay did not flash, but the silence settled in with a weight far more dangerous than any alarm. Erin Carter stood in the center of the chaos that had quieted her breathing, steady, even as her heartbeat raced, like the tactical engine firing inside her mind. The scent of jet fuel, hot metal, and the faint trace of ozone from the scorched control panel blended into a thick atmosphere that would make an ordinary person dizzy. But Erin did not move. Her eyes were locked onto the four-sided black steel crate resting motionless on the conveyor belt, like a dark tumor buried inside the airport's veins. It had stopped shaking, but the soft clicking she had heard moments earlier still echoed inside her like a shard of metal scraping against every survival instinct she possessed. She did not know what was inside, but she knew this was no ordinary weapons smuggling. Whatever it was, It was important enough for Mulligan to gamble his entire life on stopping her from getting close. Ramirez's voice burst back into her earpiece, this time layered with wind and the hurried footsteps of the rapid response teams behind him. "Carter, we are 1 minute from your position. What is your situation?" Erin drew in a slow breath, her eyes never leaving the crate. One target fully neutralized, 2 others unconscious. Mulligan restrained. No additional shooters. But she paused, weighing each word. The steel crate moved. Silence. Then Ramirez's tone dropped heavy and unsettling. "We just received intel from the collection unit. Carter, what you are looking at is not documents, not tech, not a weapon, at least not any kind we are familiar with." Erin frowned. She hated vague answers. But Ramirez was not the type to be vague without reason, which meant Command did not know what the crate was either, which meant this threat was bigger than protocol. Bigger than the airport. And it meant her mission had just turned into something else entirely. The distant roar of an engine echoed from the runway as an airport police vehicle sped toward the loading bay, but Erin felt the atmosphere shift. A few cargo workers standing far off exchanged glances in her direction, not curious but wary. Too wary. One slowly lifted his phone as if reporting to someone. Erin's heartbeat leveled into the cold rhythm of readiness. They were not bystanders. They were links in the chain. She turned to Mulligan, who was still hunched over on the floor, his breath ragged from pain and fear. When their eyes met, the arrogance of a power-drunk officer was gone. All that remained was a raw, primal terror, weighing him down like lead. Erin stepped closer and crouched to his level. "Talk. How did you know I was an agent? Who told you? Who ordered you to take me out here?" Mulligan's lips trembled. Not in defiance. He wanted to speak. He wanted to spill everything. He was simply too frightened to form full sentences. They have been watching you for a long time. It wasn't me. I was just the warning. They said if I let you get near the crate, I would be dead before sunrise. I thought I could scare you off. But you... He fell silent, unable to articulate the staggering imbalance he had just witnessed. Erin rested her hand on her knee, studying him the way she would a half-finished map. Her voice dropped firm and precise, each word cutting into him like a cold blade. "Who are they?" Mulligan swallowed hard, lifting his eyes with hopeless desperation. "I don't know their names. Only that they are not airport staff, not Transportation Security Administration, not any force I've ever known. They only show up at night, move shipments, then disappear. Nobody dares ask questions." A faint numbness spread across Erin's spine. A network large enough to bribe, threaten, or control this many internal personnel was no small criminal ring. This was a structure, a hidden system, a world operating inside another world, unseen by the public. The large steel door behind her swung open. Ramirez entered at the head of his tactical team, weapons raised and ready. He scanned the scene, the unconscious men Mulligan, in cuffs, the smoking panel. Then his gaze landed on the black crate. His jaw tightened. "Good work, Carter. We will take over from here." But Erin did not step back. She looked at him, at the crate, then at the cargo workers slowly dispersing from the area one by one, like people who understood the real hunt was about to begin and wanted no part of it. Ramirez caught the same realization in her eyes. He asked quietly, "What did you find?" Erin did not answer immediately. She inhaled once, letting all the observations, glances, reactions, and fragments of information run through her mind like a fast-moving current. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, tense, and heavy enough to sound like a verdict. "This is not a small group. not a side operation. This is a network with roots inside the airport itself. And if they know about me, that means they know about the mission." Ramirez froze. A chill flickered across his expression. "Carter, are you saying Erin cut him off with 3 words that dropped into the cargo bay like a dead weight? The mission is exposed." And in that instant, she knew this was no longer investigation, no longer containment. It had reached the highest threshold: life and death. Whichever side made the first mistake would be the first to die. Nightwind slipped through the cargo bay's half-closed door, carrying a chill that made the air feel even heavier. Floodlights swept long beams across the transport aircraft outside, making the entire scene tremble beneath an unseen pressure. Erin Carter stood at the center of that tightening storm, her eyes no longer calm. Beneath her controlled exterior, she could feel it. Clearly, a larger darkness was creeping closer. Ramirez signaled his tactical team to begin securing the steel crate. Their synchronized footsteps echoed, metal clattered as they locked down the area. But Erin knew they were already behind something faster, wider, and with a head start, long before she ever arrived. A cargo handler 20 paces away suddenly lifted a hand to his ear as if tapping an invisible earpiece. Erin caught the movement instantly, short, precise, nothing like an ordinary worker's habit. She said sharply under her breath, "Ramirez, it is not just Mulligan. They have others in this area." But her warning came one heartbeat too late. The cargo bay lights died, not flickered, died all at once, as if someone had ripped out the power source. Darkness swallowed everything. A harsh metallic slam reverberated from the crate. Erin spun on instinct, her hand flying toward the weapon hidden under her reflective vest. Tactical flashlights snapped on, slicing the dark into narrow white beams, but the space was too vast to illuminate. Ramirez barked over the chaos, "Hold your positions! Where are the backups?" No one had time to answer. A long electric screech tore through the air, cold, enough to raise goosebumps along the spine. Erin felt every muscle tighten. The steel crate was opening. Not forced open from outside, opening by itself from within. She stepped forward half a pace. The beam of a flashlight cut through the dark and revealed a slit of widening metal. 2 agents raised their weapons, breath quick and tight. Ramirez growled, "Carter, get back." But she did not. Every instinct pounded inside her skull. Whatever was in there was not alive in any normal sense. Not human, not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was something else, something an entire shadow network had risked everything to hide within global transport routes. The crate widened enough to reveal a smooth gray metallic surface inside. It was still. It gave off no heat, but its design was impossibly precise, not belonging to any commercial or military technology Erin had encountered. Strange markings ran across its surface. Not letters, not numbers, something coded, carved with meticulous detail. Erin felt her pulse hammer. This was no smuggling operation. Ramirez inhaled sharply. "Lock it down. Now. Call the military tech unit. I want the entire sector sealed in 1 minute." But Erin heard what he didn't. Footsteps. Not one person, many. And not walking, running. Straight toward them. From 3 directions. She spun instantly. Figures burst from the shadows, some in worker uniforms, others in airport security jackets. But none carried weapons openly. None shouted. None hesitated when they saw the tactical team. They charged with the desperation of people who had made peace with dying, so long as the crate never fell into official hands. Ramirez barely opened his mouth before Erin shouted, "Move!" The wave collided with the tactical agents like a dark tide. Flashlights crashed to the floor, spinning wildly, scattering chaotic beams across the room. Erin surged forward, slamming one attacker away from the crate, driving him to the ground. He didn't fight back, didn't throw a punch. He only clawed at the crate, trying to pull it off the belt, as if he had been programmed for one task alone. Another figure lunged at Ramirez. Erin snapped around, kicking the man hard in the ribs, sending him sprawling. She hissed Ramirez, "They are not fighting us. They are trying to destroy it, to keep anyone from taking it." Ramirez backed toward the crate, firing a stun gun twice. Two bodies fell, yet even on the ground, they tried to crawl forward, desperate to reach the steel walls one more time. Inside the crate, the clicking came again. Louder, heavier. Erin felt her scalp prickle. She lunged forward and slammed her hands against the lid, trying to force it shut. But something inside pushed back with abnormal strength. She leaned her full weight. Ramirez threw his shoulder in. Two more agents joined, straining against the growing force inside. Erin gritted her teeth, growling. "Whatever this is, it is not our technology." The words hit the air like a spark. A tearing metallic shriek ripped through the room as the lid snapped open another fraction, then stopped. Erin froze. The force inside had not weakened. It had paused, waiting. Still as a predator, hidden behind stone. The moment stretched each breath thick with dread. Even the attackers in the room stopped struggling, as if they sensed it too. Then, from within the crate, a sound emerged. Not mechanical, not electrical, more like the first inhale of something waking up. Erin whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Ramirez, the crate is not the objective." Ramirez turned toward her, his face draining of color. Then what as Erin looked around at the attackers who had thrown themselves forward without thought, at their empty eyes, at the way they moved like people hollowed out by fear or devotion. They were not trying to steal it. They were trying to contain it, or keep it from escaping. Then she looked toward the cargo bay entrance, where a new figure had appeared, standing, still watching, not running, not attacking, just observing with an expression Erin had never seen on any human face. She understood instantly. The crate was not the target. The target was the one who awakened it, or the one it obeyed. And that person had just stepped into the game. The moment the man stepped into the doorway, the entire cargo bay seemed to tighten, as if the air itself were being crushed. No one spoke, but the silence grew so heavy it turned every breath into effort. Erin Carter turned toward him, sensing Ramirez shift behind her and the electric crackle of the tactical team's stun weapons, raising the tension even further, all of it aimed at the newcomer. He was a man in his early 40s, tall, but not built like a soldier. His posture was straight and composed, as if he had walked into a private briefing rather than a chaotic crime scene with 3 unconscious bodies and a steel crate seconds from forcing itself open. His long gray coat showed no wrinkles. The cuffs were neatly folded, and his polished leather shoes looked freshly shined. But what held Erin's gaze was his eyes. They did not belong to a criminal, nor to a man desperate to flee. They were too calm, too knowing, too calculating. As if he had been standing there all along, waiting for the right second to reveal himself. Ramirez spoke first, his voice taut as a drawn wire. "Do not move." The man did not flinch. He showed no fear, no irritation. He glanced around the bay with the detached coldness of someone assessing the condition of his assets after a minor inconvenience. When his eyes settled on Erin, they lingered a fraction too long. Erin felt something shift inside her. He was not looking at her the way someone looks at an armed agent. Not like an enemy, but as if he knew her. A chill ran down Erin's spine. He took one small step forward, just enough for the emergency lights to illuminate his face. Pale skin, gray-streaked hair expression controlled to the point of emptiness. But his eyes, pale blue and deep like a frozen lake, held something Erin could not decipher. Ramirez barked. "I said stop!" The man paused. Gently, respectfully, but not out of fear. Erin sensed the tension in the room pivot. The steel crate behind her had gone unnervingly quiet, as if whatever was inside was now focused entirely on the man. The attackers who had stormed the bay moments earlier also stopped struggling, though two of them were still pinned to the floor. Their heads turned toward him like reflex, as if they took orders from his eyes alone. Erin spoke, her voice low and sharp. "Who are you?" The man did not answer immediately. He looked down at Mulligan trembling on the floor, then at the two unconscious men. Finally, he faced Erin again. His words dropped into the silence like deliberate pieces on a chessboard. "I am the one who warned them you would come." Ramirez snarled. "What is his name? Who does he work for? Is he in charge of these people?" Erin lifted a hand, stopping him, her gaze still locked on the stranger. Every instinct she had was screaming the same thing. This man was not just part of the network. He was the key. She asked again, this time cutting straight through. "Be specific. Who are you?" The man tilted his head slightly as if evaluating her using criteria she did not understand. Then he spoke, his voice soft enough to be terrifying. "The only person in this room who knows exactly what that crate contains." A cold current swept through Erin's arms. Ramirez shot her a look filled with a fear she had never seen in him. The tactical team tightened their formation. Several infrared laser dots landed on the man's chest. He did not react. Erin continued, her voice controlled but edged with steel. "Then what is inside it?" The man held her gaze, the same calm expression, but his voice struck every person in the bay, like a weight dropped on their chest. "The thing you have spent years searching for, but never found." Erin froze. Her breath hitched. Ramirez turned to her, stunned. "Carter, do you know what he is talking about?" Erin did not answer. Not because she refused, because she could not. Something cracked open in the sealed vault of her memory, revealing a hollow space she had locked away long ago. And now, in a horrifying way, this man was tearing it wide open in front of everyone. He took another small step, and this time no one dared to stop him. His voice drifted through the air, soft as a passing breeze. "Carter, from the beginning, you were never hunting them. You were hunting the truth about yourself." The entire cargo bay froze. Erin stood motionless. Ramirez looked at her as if his entire understanding of the mission had just shattered. And in a moment that felt longer than an entire lifetime, Erin realized this had never been a battle against smugglers. This was a battle against a secret she never knew she carried. The engines out on the runway growled in one long rumble, stretching the suffocating silence inside the cargo bay, until it felt like the whole room was being crushed under an invisible weight. Erin Carter stood frozen, every muscle pulled tight like wire. The man's words were more than a threat. They were a blade, slicing straight into the deepest part of her memory, a place she had always believed untouchable. Ramirez stiffened, unable to take even half a step forward. He just stared at Erin, the agent who had survived cross-border operations, Violent underground networks and killers with nothing to lose now standing like someone who had just been ripped out of her own life. The gray-coated man kept that same composed stance unmoved by the array of weapons aimed at him. He spoke again, his voice low, but cutting through the air with perfect clarity, as if each word were being carved into the cold steel walls. Before you ever became an agent, Carter, you were chosen. Erin's fingers curled so tightly that her thumb brushed against the small scar near her left wrist. The scar she had always assumed came from an old mission, a meaningless injury. But now it burned, numb, as if it were waking up. Erin hissed through her teeth, forcing herself back into the present. I do not know what you are trying to do, but psychological warfare does not work on me. The man's lips lifted in a faint smile, not mocking and not kind, the smile of someone who had predicted her reaction many years before she ever had it. You do know. You just do not want to remember. Ramirez shouted, "Stop right there! Hands up! Drop everything!" But the man ignored him and took one single deliberate step toward Erin, like someone approaching an old acquaintance. Two agents pressed their weapons to his head, but he did not react. Erin flicked off her weapon's safety. No one moves. He stopped. His pale blue eyes stayed locked on hers, stripping away every layer of defense she had ever built. Carter. Your memories were sealed when you were 20. Not by my organization, by your own agency. Erin felt her heart drop. Ramirez swung toward her, voice cracking. What is he talking about, Carter? Your mission, your training files are incomplete. Erin could not answer. In her head, a rising ring of static began to fill her ears. Not sharp, but deep, like the echo of a locked door slowly being forced open. The man continued every word, slicing into a part of her mind she had not touched in almost a decade. You did not join the federal task force like everyone else. You were placed into it because you were the only survivor. He paused, letting the weight of the sentence settle into her bones. Of the first experimental breach. The room seemed to collapse for one suspended second. Ramirez stepped back, eyes wide. The tactical team exchanged horrified looks. Mulligan, who once treated Erin like a problem to swat aside, now shook violently, realizing that whatever he had been fighting was never just an agent. Erin's voice came out broken, barely a sound. What are you saying? The man raised a hand gently and pointed toward the steel crate behind her. The thing inside is the remaining piece of the project that created you. Erin felt her heart stop for a beat. Her breath froze halfway in her throat, and as if confirming his words, the steel crate emitted a small metallic sound like an answer. This time the sound resembled a call. Ramirez stumbled back 2 full steps. Carter. Do you know what he is talking about? Erin gripped her weapon so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Something in the air changed, a familiar scent, a sting from her wrist, a fractured image flashing through her mind, impossible to identify, but strong enough to twist her stomach. Another door inside her memory opened. She spoke, voice trembling but sharp like steel. If you think I am going to believe anything you fabricate? The man tilted his head slightly. I do not need you to believe. He slipped a hand into his coat, and every agent raised their weapons' lasers, pinning him in place. But he kept speaking. I only need you to see. He pulled out a small object, its surface glinting under the emergency light. Erin recognized the shape immediately, a thin metal fragment engraved with the same symbols carved into the steel crate. One half of a complete structure, and when he tossed it toward her, it made a sound. Not the sound of metal hitting the floor, a matching sound, a click, a connection. From inside the crate, another sound answered louder and longer, as if the thing inside had recognized its missing piece. Erin felt her skin bristle. She understood. Every final piece of the puzzle snapped into place. This project did not create just a device. It created her, and the thing in the crate was created from the same blueprint. Like her, or worse, built to find her. Ramirez choked out a warning. Carter, fall back now. But Erin could not step back. Because she knew the truth rising through her chest like a cold tide. The thing that had awakened did not wake by accident. It woke because she had arrived. The metallic echoes from inside the steel crate pulsed outward like the heartbeat of a waking creature, each throb, heavy deep and trembling through the frozen air. The cargo bay suddenly felt smaller than it had any right to be, despite being wide enough to hold forklifts and rows of towering crates. Erin Carter stood at the center of the storm, her hand locked around her weapon, yet she knew the gun no longer mattered. The gray-coated man remained at the entrance, unafraid and unhurried. His eyes stayed fixed on Erin with a stillness far too deliberate, as if he had opened a door she could never close again. Ramirez took half a step forward, but Erin lifted a hand to stop him. His breathing was heavy and shaking, something almost unheard of from a veteran agent like him. Carter, he is saying you are part of the project, an experiment. Do you know anything about this? Erin clenched her teeth. She had always believed she knew her past, every mission, every scar, every loss. But now her memories felt like a window clouded with years of dust. She could see the shapes behind it, but nothing clearly. Something had been erased, not by time, by intent. The man in gray took another step, his voice low and resonant like a sound drifting up from the bottom of a well. You were not chosen. You were activated. Erin snapped her arm up, gun leveled at his chest. Do not say another word. But he continued anyway, softly, effortlessly untouched by the threat of a loaded weapon aimed at his heart. The thing in the crate is not a weapon. It is the original form, and you are the refined version. Erin's vision swayed. A thin dizziness laced through her skull. Her eyes blinked rapidly, and in that single blink, a memory shattered open. A white laboratory drenched in sterile light, the stench of disinfectant, someone shouting next to her ear, a gloved hand pinning her wrist to a metal table. 1 second. That was all. But it was enough to choke her breath. She did not remember it, but her body remembered. Ramirez stared at her, fear flooding into his voice. Carter, are you all right? You are pale. Erin stepped back half a pace and drew in a breath, steadying herself. I am fine. The man in gray tilted his head, his gaze cutting through her like he could read her pulse. You do remember that moment. Even if your mind was sealed, your body kept the memory of the pain. Behind Erin, the steel crate shook again hard enough that the conveyor belts groaned. A latch shot loose and clanged against the wall in a shower of sparks. Ramirez spun around, shouting, Team 2, secure the rear. Nothing leaves this bay. But Erin heard something else, a faint sound from inside, like a newborn drawing its first breath. Soft, weak, but alive. Not machinery. Not hardware. A living being. Erin stepped closer, ignoring Ramirez's desperate shout. Carter, get back! It is dangerous! She did not hear him. Every instinct she had was being pulled toward the thing inside the crate. Her chest tightened with a strange, suffocating familiarity. Not fear, not horror, but something primal. The man in gray watched her, and for the first time his voice carried something like sorrow. Poor child. You thought you were an agent, but from the beginning you were a product. A thunderous crack ripped through the room as the crate's lid exploded upward, throwing 2 agents to the floor. Ramirez lunged to shield Erin, but she was already standing at the edge of the crate, her eyes drawn toward it, as if caught in a trance. The gray mass inside shifted, not like metal on hinges, but like something stretching itself awake. The smooth steel panels unfolded layer by layer, blooming like a mechanical flower. At its center, a compact human-like figure knelt, body tethered to the machine by hundreds of thin metallic threads. A person, but not fully human. Their skin reflected a faint metallic sheen. Their short hair glimmered silver. Their form was graceful yet incomplete, as if sculpted from both biology and engineered design. When they lifted their head, their eyes opened pale blue, the exact shade Erin's turned under certain light. Ramirez whispered, horrified, "Dear God, it..." And the man finished. For him. "Looks like her, because it is her predecessor." The being lifted their gaze to Erin, not afraid, not hostile. They looked at her like a child seeing the only familiar soul in an unfamiliar world. Erin felt a sudden burn sear through her wrist. She yanked up her sleeve. The tiny scar was glowing, the same color as the being's eyes. Erin staggered back, her heartbeat splintering into uneven bursts. No gun fired, no agent moved. No one knew what to do. The man in gray delivered the final blow, his voice like the verdict of a sentence passed long ago. "Carter, you were never meant to fight them. You were created to lead them." Erin's entire body jolted. Ramirez grabbed her arm, pulling her back, his voice cracking. "Erin, do not tell me. Do not tell me he is telling the truth. Do not tell me you are." Erin said nothing, because the being in the crate reached out a hand toward her, and she, without thinking, reached back, as if it were the most natural thing she had ever done. The moment their hands were about to touch the ground, trembled beneath them as if a surge of electricity tore through the entire cargo bay. No one knew what would happen next. But Erin knew one thing for certain. This moment would decide who she was and which side she belonged to. Looking back on the entire story, we see a truth that only those who have worked in intelligence truly understand. The most dangerous enemy is not the one standing before you, but the secret, quietly living within you. Erin Carter was not only confronting an underground network, she was confronting the truth about her own origin, a truth capable of shifting the balance of power entirely if placed in the wrong hands. And that is the deeper lesson in a world shaped by shadows and classified information. What matters most is not a person's background, but the choices they make when the truth finally surfaces. If you believe that stories about human nature and hidden strength like this should continue to be told, make sure to like and subscribe so you do not miss the next chapter of this journey. Before you leave the video, leave a short comment. Awaken now.